Story 1. Found out while building an Ancestry.com family tree that my deceased father-in-law was married to another woman in another state when my wife was born, and divorced her and married my mother-in-law within a month of her birth. They were married over 40 years when he died. I'm 100% certain my wife doesn't know this and 99% certain my mother-in-law doesn't either. Story 2. I think the only secret I've kept is that she is honestly a terrible gift buyer. She is easily the sweetest, most caring person I've ever met, who would do anything for anyone. And when she buys gifts, in her heart of hearts, she really thinks she did so well and is so proud of herself. I will die with that secret because that beautiful soul does not need to be tarnished with that. But I am a grown man who loves The Office. Nothing about me screams I would like a music box that plays The Office theme. Story 3. My older sister has been unwell for about 2 years now, and we have had virtually no contact the entire time. My husband thinks it is no big deal to me because of how dumb the situation is, but it really eats me up inside every single day. I cannot talk to him about how much it hurts me because he just laughs it off. I talk to my therapist just so I can release some of the tears and hurt I am feeling because I just want my sister back. Story 4. I hid cash to pay for a lawyer. I was up to about $12,000. My husband was always drunk, and it was destroying our family. He retired from the toxic corporate job and stopped self-medicating with alcohol, so with therapy and time, we are in a good place now. He was pretty shocked when I told him about it. We used some of the cash to pay for house maintenance, but there is still about $10,000 locked up in the house for an emergency fund. Story 5. I would never share my own story here, for fear it would come out. But I did have a good friend in high school in the late 1980s whose dad had a whole other family 2 miles away and kept it all a secret until he was 80-something. The kids were all similar ages. How they never ran into each other at a supermarket, baseball game, or travel sporting high school event is beyond me, but he did it. Story 6. She moved from her hometown to be with me. Her best friend from that hometown was in treatment for cancer. She would go visit him periodically. I was good friends with him too. She had not visited him in quite a while, maybe a year, and couldn't make it back for Christmas. She sent him a long letter and Christmas card but messed up the address. He passed away suddenly, and the card ended up being returned to our home. I saw the returned letter in the mail and realized what happened. I threw it away and told her that she could have some solace in that he knew she was thinking about him before he passed. I will never tell her the truth. Story 7. I don't like mini golf. We went mini golfing on our first official date. It was fun because he is fun. Now we go mini golfing at least once a year on summer vacation. We bring the kids now, and it's this whole day. The kids love it. My husband talks about our first date, and the whole thing is so damn cute. But I hate mini golf. I'll never tell him. Why would I? It won't do any good. After more than 20 years, it would just be mean. So every year I go and make the best of it. It's only fun because they're fun. Story 8. I hate to be the not me but a friend person, but it's appropriate. I had a friend who dated someone long-term whose father died in a freak accident when they were young. When things got more serious and they planned on getting married, my friend's future mother-in-law confided to them that their partner's father had actually died by suicide. She asked that my friend never tell her partner, as she feared for her child's mental health if they knew. We kind of drifted apart, so I have no idea how it is now, but my friend felt incredibly conflicted about this and wished she had never been told. Story 9. Not dark at all on my part. The only reason I hesitate when he wants to use my phone is in case he sees how many tabs I have open and how much absolutely ridiculous trashy celebrity gossip I'm reading about. He wouldn't care, but I'd like to pretend I'm not rotting my brain in my spare moments for some reason. When my dad passed away, he had a girlfriend I didn't care for. She tried to take his house and estate from me. She failed miserably, but I did have to hire a lawyer and waste a day standing over her while she poked around looking for things that she thought were hers. I found out about a year later that she was involved in an art forgery ring. I found out from a New York Times article even. My dad would have found it kind of funny, though. He loved having crazy stories. And crazy girlfriends, I guess. Story 10. I'm female and asked my male coworker for a hug. He's twice my age, so to me it was a dad hug since my own dad's dead, but my husband would consider it cheating. I had asked my husband for a hug the same day, and he had refused because he wanted me to pull myself together first. My coworker saw I was a mess and agreed to hug without hesitation. Story 11. I was cleaning out our office and found a random, unmarked notebook. It turns out my now husband was once lamenting the fact that an attractive female coworker would never be interested in him. This was several months after we started dating, had said, "I love you," and spent every weekend together. It was a punch to the gut. He said he loved me but was pining after a coworker, and apparently, I'm unattractive enough to be with him. Story 12. He never took his medication and was always difficult. So I crushed his leftover bipolar medication into his food every night so he would go to sleep and leave me alone. It was paradise while it lasted. Story 13. I was sexually assaulted at a nightclub 12 years ago. When it first happened, I was only 18 and thought I was somehow to blame, so I didn't tell my then boyfriend, who is now my husband. I carried so much shame about it for years. I now realize that it was not my fault and that I could tell him, but it seems a strange thing to bring up after so long. I nearly told him earlier this year when I had a nightmare about it, though I just couldn't do it. Story 14. I told someone I had been with for about a year that I had been raped by a past partner. I wish I had kept that secret, because she immediately broke up with me. Turns out, her side piece was a convicted rapist. Story 15. Okay, maybe a little darker than some, but I have no one I can really tell this to. Several years ago, my husband's ex-best friend sexually assaulted me. We were separated at the time, and he tried to take advantage of my vulnerable state. We got back together shortly afterward. The same guy who assaulted me is now in jail for being a pedophile. That, plus the other thing, I know my husband would kill him or beat him within an inch of his life at the very least. When the news broke about him being in jail, he often talked about how much he wanted to beat him up. Well, I'm mostly over it, but I'll probably take that one to my grave. Story 16. That I had initiated an escape plan to break up with my ex-girlfriend of a year. I found out she was stalking a former ex she had psychologically and physically abused and went around painting him as the abuser when really it was her. After the post-traumatic stress disorder settled in, a therapist confirmed I dated a vulnerable narcissist with sociopathic tendencies. After I blocked her everywhere for my own safety, she would go on to harass and stalk my friends and family to get information on my whereabouts. It still affects me a whole year later. I've never met such an evil person in my entire life, but she will still cry the victim. Story 17. My ex does not know that I missed my big career opportunity with better pay, location, and, most importantly, better mental health. I did that because I wanted to give her attention and support all the time. She was not doing well at that time. Well, she ended up cheating on me. Story 18. The darkest secret I have kept from my partner is that, in the past, I found it hard to share my true feelings, whether it was fear, insecurity, or doubt. I held back because I did not want to burden them or complicate things, but I have come to understand that being honest, even when it is tough, is essential for a strong relationship. Since then, I have been making an effort to be more open. Story 19. I didn't use Vantablack to paint their darkroom because it was far too expensive. I only used regular Dulux black paint. However, they and everyone they show believe it is Vantablack and therefore think it is amazing. I suppose this secret is not as dark as it should be. Story 20. My Reddit account, honestly. I don't have anything nasty, anything to hide, or subscribe to anything that would raise eyebrows. But I like having conversations that I just can't have in person. Say what you will about social media, but there's a bit of freedom even when being totally honest. Example, what's next on your travel bucket list? I don't mind telling him, but it would be a while until he asked. And by then, I'd have already changed my mind, or maybe I wasn't as serious about it, just whimsy. If he'd looked and I said I'd like to return to the Swiss Alps, he'd start making a fuss for arrangements and all that, versus answering on Reddit to see what has changed since I was last in Lauterbrunnen, etc. Story 21. That I've brought up assisted suicide with my psychiatrist and general practitioner. I've been suffering from depression, anxiety, and eating disorders for most of my life, and I'm just so done fighting. I feel terrible even thinking about it since I feel like I have a responsibility towards my partner and our pets to stay alive. But I also feel trapped with no way out. Story 22. My 28-year-old stay-at-home wife thinks I make $80,000 a year. I made $170,000 this year, just at work. I have $2,000 from every paycheck, so $4,000 a month, going to a hidden high-yield savings account at 4.5% annual percentage yield. So she thinks I make about $2,700 a paycheck. I also have an additional $4,900 in military disability that is untaxed and goes to the same account. So $8,900 untouched every month for the past 5 years. I have over $500,000 in this secret account. We still rent a 2-bedroom apartment and have a 4-year plan to buy a house. Our budget is $400,000 in those 4 years. What she doesn't know is I bought 30 acres 3 years ago in cash, and in 5 years, I'm going to have her build her dream house with custom plans on the land with a budget of $1.5 million and pay cash for it. Story 23. About 6 months after I gave birth to my daughter, I got pregnant again. My husband and I were living at his parents' house at the time, rent-free, yet we still barely made enough money to support one child. I was devastated when I found out, not only because of the financial burden, but also because my mental health made it a struggle to be a good mom to the child I already had. I wanted an abortion, and my husband agreed with me that it was the best option for us at the time. He was supportive and had an upbeat attitude about the whole thing right up until we checked in at the clinic. He broke down in the lobby, and while he still supported my decision, he just couldn't maintain the facade that he was okay with this any longer. Up until that moment, I had absolutely no clue how sad he was about this, and my heart broke because I should have noticed. This didn't change my decision, however. They make you get an ultrasound before the procedure, and I decided that I would try to spare him a small amount of guilt. He didn't accompany me to the ultrasound, so when it was done, I went back to the lobby and gambled on a lie I hoped he would believe. I told him the ultrasound technician couldn't find a heartbeat and that the fetus was not viable, but they would still perform the dilation and curettage instead of waiting to miscarry. He seemed so relieved that the decision to end this life was no longer ours to make. I genuinely think he believed it, but if he didn't, he has never called me out on it or questioned it. That was a decade ago, and I still feel terrible for lying, but at least he doesn't have to live with the guilt or regret for a decision I would have still made regardless. Story 24. I am only staying in my marriage because my spouse cannot financially survive alone. They are almost 70, transgender, and do not have other family. I care about them, but not like a normal marriage. Story 25. Sometimes I fake emergencies in the morning to help him get out of bed. He will wake up easily to help me, but if it's for himself, he will snooze his alarm 100 times and be late. Story 26. I didn't like his enchilada-style burritos. They were mushy. And while that is true, the more serious answer is that I was sexually abused by my father. Took me 20 years to find the courage to tell him. Story 27. That I haven't been attracted to my partner since he gained a lot of weight. It's not helpful, he doesn't need to know. And the reason he gained weight is from all the stress over the past year helping support me during a court case against my abuser. I've never loved anyone like I love him, but seeing him so unhealthy makes me sad and a little bit repulsed. Story 28. That my depression and the resulting procrastination get worse and worse, despite being in therapy and being deaf. I keep a charade of enjoying my birthday gifts and liking our family trips, but every flicker of enjoyment I pay for with thoughts of being undeserving. Each morning I wish I wouldn't have woken up, but I keep slogging because I know that my suicide would kill my mother and traumatize our child. Story 29. I love my wife about 5% less than before her affair. We've done a bunch of therapy together and individually and have reconciled and are doing well, but it's been years and at this point I don't think that 5% is ever coming back. I kind of miss it. Story 30. I want us to press our naked butts together and fart at the exact same time. Probably do it a few times and make a video compilation of it just for good measure. Story 31. I missed out on many opportunities in life due to narcissistic parents and brothers who undermined me every chance they had. I cut everyone off and do not feel guilty about it. Story 32. When my partner and I first started dating, He was also casually dating another woman. It was all up front, no lies or anything. She lived in his current city and I lived in his hometown, 3 hours away. This continued for a month until I had enough and knew he was the man I wanted to be with long term. He would go silent on the nights they went out, so I decided I needed to go silent for a night. I had zero intention of going on any other dates, but let him believe I had gone on a date. The next day, he told me he was ready to commit, and years later, we are still together. I will take it to my grave. Story 33. This was a long time ago and probably not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but in college, my boyfriend cheated on me. We stayed together, but I should have broken up because it messed with my head. Eventually, I cheated back by kissing someone else because I thought I would feel better if we were even. I never told the boyfriend, and he carried the guilt of being the cheater in the relationship until we eventually ended it several years later. I still feel bad about that,